In this next project, we're going to explore a sort of Angry Birds type game where you shoot a cannon and try and knock down a building. Let's just see it in action. Right, so here's the cannon, and we can raise or lower the barrel by using the up or down cursor keys. And then by pressing the mouse button or the left control, we can shoot a cannonball, and the idea is to knock over the building. The main thing that we're going to explore here really is to shoot the cannonball in the right direction, depending on how high the barrel is elevated. But we're also going to explore things like the particle effect, where we get the explosion, and adding sounds to actions. Okay, so the first thing we need to do with this sort of program is to develop the graphics to make it. It is important that you consider how you're going to develop the graphics and what the overall look of the game is going to be. And to create things like this, the cannon, it's very useful to have a vector graphics program such as InkScape, which is freely downloadable and freely usable. And so we'll just explore how to create these graphics using InkScape. Okay, here we are in InkScape, the vector graphics application, and here's my drawing area. It's an A4 size. I've got some tools down here and some options down here, and a status bar along the top here. Okay, so I'm just going to zoom in on here, and so we can get a closer view. And I'm going to use this to create the assets needed to build my cannon. Now, one way of using a vector graphics application is to build more complex shapes out of simple shapes. So we have got some very simple shapes here I'm going to use to create a more complicated cannon. So I'll start with the knob at the end of the cannon. So I'm going to use a circle, and I'm going to drag a circle. Now, excuse me. If you want to make the circle perfect, hold down the control key while you do it, and that'll restrict it to a perfect circle. Okay. There's my circle. I don't want to fill here, so I'm just going to click on the cross there. I want a black outline, but I think my outline is minimal at the moment, so I'm just going to go into the object menu where I can pick up the fill and stroke options. Yeah, so and just make that outline a bit thicker. So I can control the fill, the color of the outline, and the style of the outline here. Okay, so that's going to be the knob at the end of the cannon. I don't particularly want this at the moment, so I shall just shrink it down to a little icon there. Now the back of the cannon is going to be another circle, so I'm going to create another one, again holding the control key. This one's going to be much bigger. And I'm going to overlap them. Okay, that's right. Now I want to make sure that this is aligned with that, so it's halfway up. So I'm going to select them both. I can do this either by dragging a big box around the two of them, or clicking one and shift clicking the other. I want to make sure those two objects are aligned. So on the object menu, I've got an align and distribute panel. Right, so I don't want them aligned horizontally, but I want them aligned vertically. Right, so it's clicked into place. Now I want to join those two together to make a more complex shape. So here up in the path menu, we've got a number of ways that we can get these two shapes interacting. In this case, I'm going to choose union to make them to one shape. Okay, that's the back of the cannon. The next step is to make the barrel, which is going to be a rectangle. Right, so I'm going to just see that it says I'm right on the on one of the nodes. I'll explain nodes later on. Let's make the cannon barrel. Okay, and then I'm going to union that with the other two objects, or the other single object now, so I've selected them all, and then union. Okay, so I've got a sort of gun shape. The next thing I want to do is add that sort of taper into the barrel of a cannon, which is typical of it. And for that I'm going to go to this, which is called the node editor. Now every curve is made up by these nodes which control the curve. So for example, if I select that one, I can alter that if I want to do so. Okay, so that looks good. I can add more nodes to this simply by double clicking. So up here I want to add that restriction, so I'm going to double click here, and a similar one down here. Right, now with those nodes selected I can drag them in. And there we are, we've got the shape of the cannon. The next thing to think about is the fill. So I'm just going back to the ordinary selection tool. I've got my fill and stroke here, so I'll bring that back. And here's the fill options. Now I want to make this look a bit 3D, so I'm going to use here, which is a linear gradient. And when you start it, you get one linear gradient, and here it is. It's given a random number. As you can see, it goes from black to transparent. I don't particularly want a transparent barrel on my cannon, so I want to edit that to make it white. So down here I've got an edit. Okay, that puts me into gradient mode, and here are the options for the particular gradient. So here it is. Now this gradient has got two stops, one at this end and one at that end, and this is the transparent one. It's black but transparent. I'm going to edit that, so I'm going to click on it, and here we've got the options for the color. Now we can arrange this in a number of different ways. We can change the colors, individual colors, and here we've got the transparency. So I could take the transparency down there, and then we've got pure black. Another way we can do it is using the hue, saturation and lightness. Here's the lightness. I'll change that up to white. So now we've got no transparency and it's pure white. I don't particularly want it black at this end and white at this end. I want the white at the top and the black at the bottom. So I can change the direction of the gradient by changing this line. So I can bring that end up there, and this end down here, and I've got my that's fine. Okay, I'm happy with that. That's my barrel. I can zoom out. The next thing I want to draw is the wheel. So I'm going to take another circle, and again holding the control key, and make a circle which is about the right size. That looks good. Right, I don't want to deal with there. I know that's the right size. So I'm going to make no fill. So I'm going to click on this X here. I want to make a brown outline to make it look like a wooden wheel. Oops. Right there. Sorry, hold the shift key. And I want to make that a lot thicker. So I've got this option here. There we go. That looks fine. And now I want to make the spokes. So I'm going to use a rectangle here. I'm just going to draw a rectangle across there. Now I want this to have a black fill, but I don't want it to have an outline, so shift click on the X, and there we've got our rectangle without an outline. Again, I want to make sure that these two objects are aligned, so I'm going to select them both, drag a big box around them, and I've got my alignment panel up here, so horizontally and vertically, so I know that that is now in the middle, vertically and horizontally. Right, deselect. I'm going to select this, and I want to make a number of spokes to go round the rim. So I'm going to duplicate, and on the edit menu we do have a duplicate, which is Control D. So I'm going to use that shortcut from now on. Right. So I've now made a duplicate, and it's sitting right on top of the original and selected. I want to rotate that, and if I go to the Object menu, we've got another panel here called Transform. I'm going to rotate this by 30 degrees. I don't care which direction. Oops, sorry. Rotate 30 degrees. Okay, I don't care whether it's left or right, so I'll stay with it on clockwise. Right, I'm going to apply that, and this second spoke has been rotated by 30 degrees. Duplicate again, remember Control D, and then I'll apply the same rotation to this new model. And again, Control D, and Control D, and one more. Right, so I have my spokes now. I'm just going to remove the rim out of the way, and I'm going to combine all of these spokes. So select the whole lot by dragging a box around them, and I can union that lot. Bring this over again. Again, I want to make sure that these two are aligned. So I've got two objects now. So again, I've got my alignment tab here. The other thing I want to do is make sure that the rim is in front of the spokes. So selecting the rim, up here on the object, I can raise it to the top. And now I'm going to join both together, but I'm not going to union this time, I'm just going to group them. So we've got an option to group. Right, there's our cannon. Now, I don't want this to be too big, so I'm just going to scale it a bit. So I'm going to select the whole lot, and we've given the option of seeing how big it is. Now, this is in terms of millimeters at the moment, and when I'm on the screen, it's going to be more about pixels. So I want this to be about 140 pixels across, or say 200 pixels. And I don't want it to be distorted. So I'm going to lock the aspect ratio here. And then I'm going to turn that into 200. And there's my scaled down cannon. That's fine. The next thing to make is a cannonball. Obvious circle. Let's scroll in. Again, I'm going to hold the Control key. That looks quite good on its own, but I'm going to give it a 3D look as well, using the fill and stroke. And this time I'm going to use a radial gradient. Right, so this is our radial gradient. That's fine, but it's the wrong way round. I'm going to rename this one. No, I'm going to add another one. I'll call this white black. Right, and I just want to reverse those two colours, so I'm going to edit this, and I can simply click on this to reverse it. There we are, and that's my cannonball. The next thing I want to make are some structures that we're going to knock down. So I'm going to use a basic rectangle here. I'm going to outline that in black and fill it with a sort of grey colour. Right, I don't want that width there, so I'm just going to reduce the outline. That looks fine. Now, one of the things we can do with rectangles is we can give it rounded corners. See, one of these corner points is round, so if we just move that down, it rounds all of the corners. Now, the other thing we've got here, a lot of filters. So, for example, we've got a distortion filter, and there's an option here with 3 dots, the ellipsis, which means that we can control this. So if we take that and then put on the live preview, we can get a sort of roughness here, and we can change that by changing the frequency and the intensity. So I can, right, so it's a bit too intense, that. So that'll do. That looks a bit like a rock, I think. So I'm going to apply that particular filter. Okay, the other thing we're going to do is make a tree support. So again, another rectangle. Okay, we've still got the I want to take that off. Now I'm going to fill this with brown to start off with. Nice brown. And I don't really want it to look like a rectangle, so I'm going to change it into a path. So on the path menu, got object to path. Now it looks the same, it's a rectangle, but now it's completely editable. So again, I'm going to put these nodes in, put one there, down there, another one here, and it's beginning to look more like a tree with branches. That's not bad. Okay, make that supporting. Now, one of the things about nodes is you can get different types. So this one, I don't really want it to be sharp like that. So I can make it into a symmetric node, and then it gives us a curve. We can do that with, say, two at the same time. So I'm shift clicking on the other. Right, that looks quite good. Move those in a bit, I think. Okay, that's quite a nice looking tree. I'm just going to decorate it a bit with a few lines. So down here we've got a calligraphy line, and we can just draw some lines on there. The effect of bark. And you can change the thickness of these lines as you wish. Change the colour too if you like. But you have to remember that these are different objects. So if you want them to move with the tree, you'll have to group the whole lot. So I'm just going to drag a box around all of that, and we're going to group them. Okay, so those are my components. Now, when I export it, I don't want them joined together, so I'm going to take this wheel and move it off. So I'm separating out all of the different objects. I'm just going to add a few lines to this. That's not bad for a quick drawing. Right, so got them all well separated out. Those are the assets that I need. So the next thing to do is to save it. Now this will be saved as an SVG. So as you can see, I've got one there, so I'm going to do Canon 2. Now it's saved in SVG format, that's scalable vector graphics, so that you can edit it again. But unfortunately Unity doesn't read this format, so we need to export it as a PNG as well. So we've got this export PNG image. It gives it the same, it doesn't here. So we'll change that. I'm going to change that to Canon Assets. Right, so it's changed it there, so I'm just going to export that. And that's fine. It's ready to be imported into Unity. One of the useful things here, this looks like a white background, but actually it's no background at all.